Hello, everybody. We are on our last session of the day. Thank you to anybody that's watched the first two. If you haven't, we have all of those on demand. You can watch them on the gypsynurse.com. So I am Rachel, the online community manager for the Gypsy Nurse, and I'm here with our CEO, Steve Curtin. How are you today, Steve?
Hi, Rachel. The third time today seeing you, and
Yes,
it is great to see you again. I'm excited for this particular session. This is going to be a lot of fun.
me too. It's a great one to end with. A good laugh.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'd like to take this opportunity before we get started. As CEO of the Gypsy Nurse, I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon, and I want to thank our travel nurse community for all that you do, particularly during this COVID pandemic. The Gypsy Nurse's mission is to support travel nurses, and we hope you find this session and the others we've planned this week to be informative and helpful in your travel nursing journey. Please remember to visit the gypsynurse.com's spring virtual conference agenda under the events tab for a full list of all of our virtual events this week. Please bookmark the gypsynurse.com as your source for travel nursing resources, including over 150,000 jobs from over 65 top agencies, housing options, and great content from experts that we publish daily to help you on your journey. As a reminder, these sessions will be recorded and will be available on demand, as Rachel mentioned, on our website the week of April the 26th, if not sooner. And would also like to remind you, too, that the Gypsy Nurse is the #1 destination for travel nurses, and we thank you for your support. I would also like to thank today's sponsor, AMN Healthcare, and Sandra Vield and Karyn Buxman for taking time today to provide some great information on the best on the nursing humor. The best parts of nursing humor, and have Karyn kind of walk you through some laughs today. I think we could all use some laughs. So Rachel, back over to you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to show you just how to find the events page and how to be entered into some of our giveaways we have going on. So you're going to want to come to the gypsynurse.com, come to the events tab, and go to Spring 21 Virtual Conference. So then once you scroll down, we're going to have our speakers, the ones that already spoke. You can watch these on demand with any of these platforms. And you can see who's upcoming this week. And then you can also, to stay up to date and learn more about everything else going on this week, is you can register. And once you register, you'll be entered to win a $100 Amazon gift card. As well as if you register for the gypsynurse.com, which is right up here at the top. I don't want to make anybody seasick by going super fast. So up here, you can easily sign up just with your first, last name, and email address. You can subscribe, and then you can also register to join on here too. So once you do that, we will put a double entry in for that $100 giveaway. So be sure to visit the gypsynurse.com and enter in those giveaways. We also have two more ways to win. So when you interact on this session, you will be entered to win another $100 Amazon gift card. This one's different. And you'll be entered to win an AMN gift box of goodies, which is a relaxing themed box. So I know you guys all need that. Everyone needs to relax a little. Speaking of our sponsor, AMN, we are going to bring up Sandra so we can give her a thanks. Thank you, Sandra, for coming on all these sessions with us today. I know the first one was a little early.
Long day, Sandra. Long day.
A little bit of a long day, but like I said in the last session, no place else I would rather be than here with you guys. It's been so fantastic to see all of just the amazing speakers that you've curated. Rachel, I know you're a big part of that. So just so great to see the information that you're providing to all of your Gypsy nurses and all of our wonderful travelers that we know are out there. Yes, everybody does need to make sure that they're getting entered in and getting that relaxation box, self-care, especially after the last year, as Steve mentioned, during this pandemic where so much was asked of you. You definitely want to make sure you're doing that self-care. So really excited to be here. And I've said it in the last two sessions. I'll say it one more time. Just can't let a moment go by without thanking all of our wonderful travelers, our nurses, who have really stood up and raised their hand to help during the last year. 2020 was the year of the nurse. And I feel like we just needed nurses more than we ever had. And I know so many of you gave so much of yourselves to really help during a pandemic that we had never seen before. So thank you to all of our travel nurses and nurses everywhere. Again, Rachel and Steve, so happy to be here today, and thank you for letting us be a part of it.
Oh, definitely. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for, yes, thank you for your support and your sponsorship. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. All right. So this is another Gypsy Nurse virtual conference veteran here with us. She is one of 250 professionals, one of only of 53 women in the world to be inducted into the Speaker of Hall of Fame. In the past 25 years, she has over 800 clients, and she speaks internationally to organizations that understand the importance of humor in business. She's an RN, MSN, a neurohumorist. She's Karyn Buxman, and I'm going to bring her on. Welcome, Karyn. Thank you for joining.
Hello, Steve,
Hi.
Rachel.
Hello,
So good to see
Karyn.
you again.
Great to
And
see
a shout
you.
out to Sandra and AMN. Thank you so much for supporting our travel nurses. It's just, there's never been a time where I can think of that nurses need to be celebrated and recognized more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. I think we're all looking for a little bit of a lighter discussion this evening. We had some serious topics on earlier today, bullying in the nursing community. Then we talked about trying to avoid housing scams and how to protect yourself on the road. So Karyn, give us something uplifting, fun, make us smile, make us laugh.
I will do my best. And so a shout out to those of you who are watching live. Thank you so much for being here. And I know some of you are watching this on a replay. But if you are here live with us, would you give us a shout out in the comments? Just let us know what's your name, where you're from, and just let us know if there's anybody out there watching, because right now on our end, sometimes it's like, is there really anybody there? So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a time in your nursing career where you felt like everybody else around you had an attitude problem? Have you ever had a time in your career where you walked past an empty patient's bed and had an overwhelming desire to lay down in it? And I know this isn't you, but have you ever known of a nurse who swiped candy from a patient's bedside while they thought they were asleep? If any of those relate to you, then you are in the right place. And I want to say, hey, to Gail from New York, Daniel, Seattle, awesome. It's your girl Regs from Portland, Katie from in Vermont, from New Jersey, me. Okay, so I'm happy you're here. And so the question that's posed to you today is, what's so funny about nursing? And some of you might immediately answer that with everything, but there's also those of you who, especially after this last 12 to 18 months, you're thinking, no, there is nothing funny happening in my life. That is probably a number of you. And why not? I mean, after all, you've had sicker critical patients this year. You've had a crushing schedule. You've had cranky and exhausted coworkers. And a lot of us, we have been isolated, socially disconnected, even if you're in a workplace. I talk to so many who say that they go home, they can't even go through the front door. They're going in through the garage. They're stripping off their clothes, hopping in a shower, and not even hanging out with their family because they didn't want to put them at risk. And this social isolation was one of the reasons why I decided to just skip the slides today. I mean, I had this wonderful, pretty little slideshow that I was going to show you. And I realized, you weren't going to be able to see me. You wouldn't be really able to see the whites of my eyes. And, if I'm looking at slides, it's hard for me to see the comments here. And yeah, so, you were saying, been there, seen that, isolated was bad. And that's the way that so many of us felt for so long. We are a society of high tech, low touch. And I think that this is really a period where all of us found out that touch was more important than we ever thought that it might be. This social isolation, some of the studies showed that someone who is extremely isolated, and that can even be when you're around other people. Have you ever been in a group of people and felt totally alone? So that kind of isolation can be the equivalent of smoking 12 to 18 cigarettes a day. So that's just a little factoid for those of you in case maybe you're ever on Jeopardy or something. But one of my mentors, her name was Vera Robinson. When I started doing research on humor, the whole reason I'm even here was because I'm in grad school and I'm flipping through a professional journal, and there's this little thumbnail of an article about a nurse researcher, Vera Robinson, who had actually studied humor. And I was getting ready to start my thesis. I was getting ready to start my whole, master's diploma. And I just thought, study humor. Oh my gosh, that would be crazy wonderful. Not a lot being done at the time. But one of the things that Vera said to me was that humor restores the human touch, the caring, to the highly technical, potentially dehumanizing world of healthcare. And I think that sometimes we lose that ability to do as much high touch as we want, especially when people are isolated and you've got COVID and you've got all of these other things going on. But trying to get more connected to people through humor. Humor can be that shortcut. Humor can help be that connection, whether it's with colleagues, whether it's with patients. And I remember a particular time, another nurse was sharing with me, because I do presentations for nurses across the country, around the world even. And she was telling me about a situation in their particular hospital, and they were trying to get across to nurses and physicians about the importance of high touch, because their scores were good in terms of what the patients felt about their caregivers. But the patients were saying, even though they could be diagnosed by doctors through x-rays and other kinds of diagnostic tests, they just wanted that sense of touch. And they conveyed this to one of their orthopedic surgeons, the importance of touch. And as he is swinging through to check on his patient before he goes into surgery, he is between her and the x-ray screen. And so he's looking at the x-ray because she has a fractured elbow. And as he's looking at this and determining what's next, he remembers, supposed to be high touch also. So he reaches under the blanket and is palpating the area while looking at the x-ray. And the elderly woman said to him, "I'm not going to stop you, but that's not my elbow." And so it's like, oh my gosh, these are the kinds of things that if you're moving fast and you're not paying attention, this kind of humor just goes right past you. I remember back to when I was a student nurse. How many of you can remember back in the day when you were a student? I mean, how long ago was that? For some of you, maybe it's only been a year or two ago. Maybe for some of you, it's been 5 to 10 years. For some of you, maybe it's been 20 years. If you're brave enough, go ahead and type in the chat. How long has it been since you were in nursing school? But I can remember we were in our foundation classes for a very long period of time, and finally came the day, our very first day, where we got to be on the floor. And I had 2 other best friends at that point. We kind of referred to ourselves as the Three Amigos. And the instructor comes up to my friend Veronica and I, and she said, "Where's your partner in crime, Sandy? We haven't seen her for hours, and it's almost time to leave the floor." We were stunned. So we're looking in her patient's room. We're looking all over the floor. And we finally found Sandy in a linen closet. And she's sobbing. I said, "Sandy, what's wrong?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, I just realized I can't be a nurse." She said, "Ill people just make me sick." And that was the very last day we ever saw Sandy. It was a long time. I can remember being in nursing school. We did a stint in long-term care, and one of my fellow students got in so much trouble. She was so enthusiastic. She picked up the dentures from every single resident who had dentures and took them to the room where she could scrub them real well and get them all nice and shiny and clean. But she also scrubbed off the names and the room numbers and any form of identification on every single set of dentures. At the time, it's so mortifying. But when you look back on that, you can find a little bit of humor into the situation. One of my very painful situations came during nursing school. I had an instructor who taught through humiliation and embarrassment. I don't know if any of you ever had an instructor like that. He was just so cruel. And I had been assigned a case. I was going to follow this surgical case of a patient who he was having a total hip replacement. And of course, I did all my homework, and I had visited with the patient, and I had just done this huge, huge care plan. And in this particular school of nursing, I was a commuter. But at this point in time, if you were a commuter student and you didn't live on campus, you couldn't wear your uniform to school. You had to change there. And so I arrived early. I grabbed my nurse's outfit. I grabbed everything else I needed to put on, and I pulled out my shoes. And I brought 2 left shoes. And this is going to date me. But one of the shoes had a regular higher heel, and the other shoe was something that was popular at the time called an earth shoe. And the earth shoe had a high front and a low heel. So when I put on these 2 left shoes and the 2 different size heels, I walked like I had some kind of neuromuscular disease. And I'm thinking, I cannot go into surgery and stand all day like this. And so I found a fellow student who said, "You can run to my room. It's just across the street. I have an extra pair of shoes that you can wear." So I go to my instructor, the villain, and I said, "I'm just going to run across the street. I still have plenty of time for my case study, but I'm wearing 2 left shoes." And he looked down at my shoes, and then he looked at me, and he said, "No, you just wear those all day." And people were laughing at me because I was limping so badly. And by the end of the day, my back hurt so bad. But this later became funny for me, and it became memorable because it allowed me to laugh at him instead of letting him laugh at me. And when I was finally a nursing instructor, I remember telling my students this story and how important it was to get off on the right foot when you're wearing 2 left shoes. And so this story of humor allowed us to create a bond, this connection through pain and discomfort. I was in critical care for a number of years. And I remember the very first patient, though, that I was assigned that I was ever going to get to do an IV all by myself. There was no mentor. There was no instructor. That I was going in alone. And this guy was getting ready to go in for surgery. But the good news was He had veins the size of garden hoses. I mean, how many of you have ever caught yourself staring longingly at somebody with their large veins, right? I mean, that really kind of catches our attention more than a lot of other things about people. And so I'm looking at these big veins and thinking, oh man, this is a piece of cake. However, the only issue was, even though there was no teacher, there's no mentor, his wife is sitting there watching my every move. That's okay. I'm not worried. I put on the tourniquet. I get everything out. I'm getting ready to put in the angiocath. And as I get ready I slip in the angiocath and I get this nice flash of blood, and I'm very proud of myself, and I hook up my tubing and I am ready to just pat myself on the back when I look up at the wife and she's scowling at me. I said, yes. And she said, when are you going to take that off? And I look at my patient's now dusky blue arm, and the tourniquet is still on, nice and tight. And so I pull up my watch, I look at it, I put one hand on the tourniquet, and I said, it can come off now. Pulled off the tourniquet. I mean, right? I mean, you don't ever want them to see you sweat, but these are the kinds of things that let you know that you're quick-witted, that you're able to deal with adversity. And again, if you can find the humor in a painful situation, you have so empowered yourself. I went on to do teaching, and after 30 years of researching humor and speaking to audiences around the world, I finally ended up here in San Diego, and I'm still carrying out my mission, which is to help high-performing health providers like yourself and give recognition, entertainment, and also tools for you to use for yourself. Because when you experience humor just by chance, I mean, that's got a lot of important qualities. But once you learn how to employ it by choice, oh, man, now, Katie bar the doors, you have such a powerful tool, and you can take it with you any place, anytime. So one of the things that I found over the last 25 years is I've spoken to nursing audiences that most nurses have a killer sense of humor. How many of you in here think you have a sense of humor? Let me ask this. Let me know if you think you're funny. Put funny in the comments if you think you are funny. And if you aren't sure whether or not you're funny, just put in sense of humor. I want to see who here is in my audience. Are you guys funny people? Are you entertainers? Or are you the ones who kind of sit back, but you enjoy it all? One of the things that I've noticed about, oh yeah, here we got some funny people, is that nurses, they have a wonderful sense of humor. And if we're totally honest, it's sick. It's twisted. And most nurses are kind of proud of that. You are the ones who can be chowing down a meal while you're describing something that is cottage cheese in appearance, or that is a milky drainage, or a hamburger appearing abrasion. I mean, right, you're just like, you can scarf it down and you can talk about all this, whereas your family, friends, not so much. They're pushing their plates away, right? And so the reason that we see this importance of sense of humor, and especially be okay with the twisted sense of humor, the sick sense of humor, is because that the closer you are to tragedy and death, the darker your humor becomes. It's a relief mechanism. I'm reading in here that, nurse humor is not for the faint of heart, and that removing maggots from a leg while eating. I mean, this is a true nurse hero. This is the kind of things that you're able to do in these times. And while we are talking about things like body fluids, death, and dismemberment, others may not understand it, but this is that inside sense of humor that we share many times. My friend and colleague for many years, she passed away last year, but Patty Wooten, I remember the first time she was quipping to me that all bleeding stops eventually. And then it took me a second and it was like, oh, all bleeding does stop eventually. And that was that kind of that dark sense of humor. When I would talk to other nurses about the importance of understanding dark sense of humor, I had one nurse come up to me after one of my presentations and she said, oh, I totally could relate to what you said. She said, wasn't too long ago, I was giving an enema to one of my patients. I had them placed on their side. I'd given them the whole enema. I had removed the tube and something dropped. And as I reached over to pick it up, she had an explosion. And immediately I put both hands to my mouth and I was like, oh no, that's horrible. And she said, oh no, it's okay. It's okay. I had my mouth shut. It's like only a nurse could find the silver lining in that bedpan. I'm telling you, that is an incredible example of the kinds of humor that we can find in the darkest of times. So I think that it's important to understand that sick humor can be a very good part of what's so funny about nursing. I think that it's a wonderful tool. And there's a caveat. There is a time and there is a place for sick humor. It's not something that we want to share outside of our group. This is something that is not meant to be laughing at patients or laughing at patients' families. But many times it is this inner sense of relief, of letting go. If we can laugh at the situation, we are empowering ourselves. We're taking away that power of that which is the tragedy and that which is the death. It gives us hope. It gives us victory. It gives us power. And so, again, keeping in mind that time and that place. But if you are keeping it within the confines of your group, if you know that it's not going to be experienced by someone who is outside that tribe and that it can't be hurtful, this is a wonderful, helpful thing for you, because our brains, the purpose of our brains is to protect us. And our brains are constantly searching for threat. And given the last year, our brains are on fire. And when our brains are on fire like this, it pulls from our cognitive capacity. It pulls from our intelligence. When we're stressed, did you know that stress can make us dumber? It's the absolute truth. Stress can lower your IQ by at least 10 points. I don't know about you. I don't have that much to spare. And so people who are incredibly stressed, and especially chronically so, we're more apt to make mistakes. We're more apt to have an accident. We're more apt to have acts of negligence. And not because we're not trying and not because we're not thinking, but our brain isn't serving us. And so when we can have these experiences, even if it's dark humor, it gives us that little bit of respite in our brain. It calms the amygdala. It allows us to start pulling from the prefrontal cortex again. And so it's very important that you are utilizing this tool. I remember when I was teaching and I had students who were taking care of a patient who was dying. She was on an intensive care unit. The patient was no longer responding to verbal stimuli, but the one thing that she did day in, day out, all throughout every shift was to call out the name of her long deceased sister, Irene. All through days, all through evenings, all through nights. Anybody who walked into this unit heard, Irene, Irene, are you there? Irene. So people At first, it was just white noise. They tuned it out. But over time, you caught people making comments like, can't someone shut her up? Can't someone give her more meds? Can't someone put a sock in her mouth? Little clues that these people were starting to kind of tip over the edge. It was time for change of shift. It's 3 o'clock. And in through the double doors comes the head nurse, Rita. Such a cutie. But the first thing she hears as she walks in is she's hearing, Irene, Irene. So she shut the doors and she walked over to the next unit into an empty patient's room. Once she was in the room, she picked up the phone and she dialed her nurse's station. The nurse who was at the station picked up the phone and she said, this is ICU Mary, how can I help you? And she said, this is Irene. Has my sister been asking for me? Once the shock wore off, people are just falling over. They are laughing. There is Cheetos coming out their mouth. There's Coca-Cola coming out their nose. All of this stress, all of this anger and frustration that was pent up, just coming out in every direction. Now, had a family member heard this, they wouldn't have been amused. However, I was there to witness, and I can tell you that over the next days, week even, that when someone came in to lift her, turn her, wipe her, feed her, medicate her, whenever they heard her say, Irene, they said, yes, she called. It was great. It was a wonderful respite. It was kept within the confines of the group, and it was the respite that these people needed. Now, there are cases where this escapes the confines, and this is something that we don't want to happen. In the event that it does happen, we want to make our apologies. We want to make sure that it's not something that will happen again. And many years ago, there was a letter in the American Journal of Nursing that has really just gone through the test of time, because this was an anesthesiologist who was overheard to laugh after a patient died, and he was seen laughing by the family members. And he felt so horrible about that he wrote this letter that I want to read to you. He called it, "To the Ones Left Behind." You saw me laugh after your father died. I was splashing water on my face at the sink midway between the emergency lobby where you stood and the far green room where his body lay. Someone told a feeble joke and I brayed like a jackass, decorum forgotten until I met your glance over the physician's gray flannel shoulder, your eyes streaming with tears. My laugh was inappropriate, and for that I apologize, but it was nonetheless a necessity. All of us worked damn hard. We intubated, oxygenated, monitored, massaged, shocked, injected, and in our own ways, we prayed. Nothing helped. After 40 minutes, the physician said to stop. We stood uneasily, avoiding one another's eyes. We began to remove our puny and now futile wires and tubes in awe of death, as always, and in silent sorrow. Being human, we all sooner or later laugh at the wrong time. I hope your father would understand that my laugh meant no disrespect. That day you saw me laugh, I knew that another patient was waiting who needed my care and full attention in surgery. As I stood at the sink and washed sweat and vomitus from my face and arms, my laugh was no less cleansing for me than your tears were for you. I think that's just a great, great piece. And such a great reminder that we will at some point laugh at the wrong time. But we're human, and that's okay. And our laugh is cleansing for us. but it's not just dark humor. Humor is everywhere. And if you rewire your brain, you're going to see more of it. Because so many times people say to me, well, you don't understand. There's nothing funny happening in my life. And again, during this crushing time over the last 12 to 18 months, it has been really abysmal. That being said, what I'm hearing from nurses, physicians, nurse and healthcare leaders is that humor has actually been their number one coping mechanism. So how do you find the humor that's there? You're just missing some of it. Hopefully you're not missing all of it, but I'm going to share with you some ways so you don't miss as much of it and get almost all of it. And that is, you want to rewire your brain. Because if you're saying to yourself, there's nothing funny happening, your brain, there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. And that part of your brain's a filter. And when you show interest in something, your filter says, oh, that's important to you, so I'll show you more of this. It's kind of like when you're online and you see this really cool pair of shoes and you're thinking, oh man, I want to get me some of those. And then you see the price and you're like, not in this paycheck. So you go back to another website, but what's on the side of your web page now? It's those shoes. They're following you everywhere, and other shoes just like them. And you might like this if. And that's because your brain is like this filter. It wants to show you more. So if you're saying, nothing funny happening here, your brain's going to go, you're so right. I'm not going to show you any humor. But if you say, there's probably something funny going on, what am I missing? Your brain's going to start showing you more of that. And don't worry if it doesn't happen right away, especially if your brain's slow. You're going to, if you haven't done it in a while, it's not like you're going to maybe do, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes on an exercise bike and then expect to ride in an Ironman the next day. You gotta build up some muscles. And so you're going to build up those muscles in your brain, and you're going to start looking and listening for what's funny. I call it see funny. And once you do this, you will hear things, you will see things that other people absolutely miss. There's all sorts of things in charting, and I wasn't sure if that would continue into EMR, but I have found that it is just as much commonplace there as it was when we were doing our notes by hand. I was looking through some actual EMR charting, and people overlook things like pulses were fixed and dilated. Okay, how about patient deserves colonoscopy? We might think that about a patient. Not good to put it in writing. Oh, this one was charted by an emergency room physician. Where was his brain when he wrote, both breasts are equal and reactive to light and accommodation? Okay, step away from me. There's things that people hear. There's stories that you hear. One nurse sent me a story, and by all means, please send me stories if you have them. Karyn at KarynBuxman.com, and I'll remind you of that at the end. But this one nurse sent me a story about a patient that she was taking care of. He was 5 years old, and he was waiting for a kidney transplant, and the organ became available. And the parents were celebrating. The staff was celebrating. The nurse goes in to do his pre-op check, and he is sobbing uncontrollably. And the parents and the nurse, they were both trying to get out of him why he was so upset. And finally, she asked the parents to leave the room. He just wasn't going to talk. And once she was alone with him, she said, can you tell me why you're so upset? And his sobbing slowed down a little bit, and he said, I need to know if this kidney is coming from a boy or a girl. And she said, what difference would that make? And he said, because I don't want to have to sit down to pee. People, you cannot make this stuff up. But if you are not tuned in to the humor around you, this is going to go right over your head, or you're not going to jot it down. You're not going to remember it. And I guarantee you, you want to remember this. You want to be able to start using it to your advantage. I was very fortunate to have another mentor, and I don't know if you ever have heard of her. Her name is Melody Shinivert. Amazingly funny nurse. And she wrote a quote once to me that said, just remember, some days you need tools. Some days you need weapons. You need your sense of humor every day. No truer words were ever spoken. You need your tools. You need your weapons, but you also need your sense of humor. It can make you healthier. It can make you more productive. It can make you smarter. It can make you safer. It can make you happier. But don't just count on it happening by chance. What can you do? How can you start planning to implement this on a regular basis? Because the number one thing that is important about humor to help you heal, to help you cope, to help you be resilient is consistency. Not just chance, choice, consistency. I talk more about this in my book, What's So Funny About Nursing. It's on Amazon. Let me tell you ahead of time, it's not a joke book. It's really about how do you use this for self-care. And there's lots of resources out there for you. Another nonprofit that I love is the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. They're having a conference even just next week where you can get CEs and all sorts of other wonderful things. But how can you make this happen on a regular basis? How can you have your go-tos? What do you do when you're so stressed out and you're trying to see funny and you can't find anything funny at the time? Another thing that you can do is stack the deck. What can you do to make sure that your brain doesn't even have to think of something funny? You just automatically have it there. On your phone, maybe you've got a funny social media site, or you have a funny audio, or you've got YouTube videos that you want to watch. What is it that's just a quick go-to where you can find something funny to give your brain a little bit of a respite? There are so many. I have a page where I just started putting a bunch of funny videos that I enjoy, and it's my go-to. I also have some other PDFs and things on there that are helpful to other people. And that's why I decided to make this also available to you, just a free source for you if you're so inclined. Otherwise, create this on your own or do both. But at stressrecoverytoolkit.com, I've just created a bunch of funny videos. They may not even be funny to you, but go check them out, see if it's funny. And if this is a great place for you, bookmark it, go there. Give me suggestions, because when people send suggestions, I continue to update the videos on the site. I would love for this just to become a bigger and bigger resource for us, a toolkit for those of us who are stressed or discouraged or depressed or anxious. So anyway, so that's your call to action. I want to bring this back full circle where I was back as a student nurse. And again, I was 6 weeks away from graduation. I couldn't wait. I was so excited. And in this particular school of nursing, our last 6 weeks, basically all we did was just check off any procedures that we hadn't done already. And so maybe the word would be spread, hey, we've got somebody who needs an NG tube, and somebody would go do that. And okay, well, who needs to, change an ostomy bag? And then word came out, who needs to do a female catheterization? I hadn't done one yet. So I was like, oh, pick me. So the nurse tells me where the room is. I run up, and I'm very actually looking forward to this, excited to this. I introduced myself to this pleasantly confused older woman. She was about 90-12. I mean, she was very sweet. I mean, she was just taking my hand and patting it and saying, oh, you're going to be such a nice nurse when you graduate. And she's just pumping me up, making me feel really good. And I had a lot of confidence because I'd read the lab manual. I'd seen the video, and I did the return demonstration in the lab. I mean, really, what more to it was there? What could there possibly be? My only 3 concerns was the instructors. I had 2 who were they were so awesome and so supportive. And then there was the villain. But, I figured my odds were good. And so I waited. And then finally, the instructor walks in, and who is it? Again, I'm cool because I have all of this background of knowledge. And so in this particular hospital, this actually was the procedure. You don't have to embellish things, I'm telling you. And so in this hospital, you raise the bed to the high level. You put a drape over the patient, and then you put a washcloth over the patient's eyes. I'm thinking, why is that? But the very last step was to turn on this switch that was like a searchlight. Oh my gosh, it was so bright. It was blinding. And back in the day, I thought that's why we put the washcloth over her eyes. I came to figure out later as an instructor, I think it's just so they don't see what the student is doing, which doesn't protect them from what the student is saying. As an instructor, I can remember students saying things like, oh, golly, this is my first time. Or, oh, gosh, I hope this doesn't hurt. Nothing inspires confidence in a patient as sideline conversation like that. But I had her draped and positioned in the washcloth and the light, and I'm ready to go. And my instructor is he's this tall, thin, pale man, and he's bouncing on his heels, letting me know he's got places to go and people to help. And so I pull back the drape, and now is my first clue that the human anatomy looks absolutely nothing like the mannequin in the lab. Oh my gosh. It's like, where is the opening the size of a garden hose? Where are these landmarks that I'm supposed to have? It's like none of this was anything like my return demonstration in the lab. And I'm starting to get kind of worried, and I see him tapping his feet. So I'm like, okay, it's got to be here someplace. Oh, I bet that's it. Strike one. Now he really starts bouncing up and down, and his face is getting red, and he starts hissing at me. He's got a little bit of a lisp, and he says, I can't believe you just missed her urethra. I can't believe you just contaminated the catheter. I'm going to have to open a second catheter because you made such a stupid mistake. Don't make a mistake like that again. Do you hear me? I'm like, mm-hmm. And so I pick up the second catheter, and I'm looking and I'm looking and I'm looking, and I'm thinking, one place it doesn't go. Oh, there it is. Strike two. Now the man becomes apoplectic. He is so upset. And now he's just hopping up and down, and he's got like this little blue vein across his forehead, and his neck veins are distended, and he's got this little white spittle coming out of his mouth. And now he's not bothering to just hiss and keep his voice down. Now he's yelling at me. And he said, I can't believe you just contaminated the second catheter. I only brought 2 catheters into this room. I'm going to have to go down the hallway and get you another catheter because of your stupid mistake. Maybe while I'm gone, he does this, and he puts his finger right at the tip of my nose, doesn't touch it, just at the tip, he points at me and he says, maybe you should ask the patient where her urethra is. And a little voice comes out from underneath the washcloth. I don't know where it is. When he heard what she said, he became so upset. He stuck his finger in my face again and said, don't you know where yours is? And stormed out of the room, leaving me in total humiliation and embarrassment. And a lot of time to think. Here I am maintaining a sterile field, and I'm wondering, how am I going to break this to my parents? I only have 6 weeks of school yet, but I'm not going to be a nurse because I'm too dumb. I'm too stupid. I'm a danger to mankind. Oh my gosh. And so finally, he comes storming back in, and at this point, I have so many tears in my eyes, I can't even see the patient. And he hands me the catheter, and at this point, I'm trying to see something. I can't see anything. And I don't know if it was divine intervention. I don't know if it was that I had obliterated all the other possibilities, but I tried one more time and struck gold. And as soon as I struck gold, he was out of there. He marches out while I am taping the catheter in place and putting things away in my humiliation and embarrassment. I am so mortified. And in this particular hospital, the way you put your supplies away, again, you don't have to embellish this. You had to get down on your hands and knees to be able to put equipment away. So I'm on my hands and knees inside the closet when the head nurse walks in, doesn't see me in the closet. She walks up to my patient, takes her hand, clasps it, and said, how's it going with your little student nurse? And I'm panicking because I know that the patient's going to say, oh, she's out looking for my urethra. But instead, the head nurse stops her before she can say anything. And she said, you know, she's the best student we have on the floor. You are so lucky. She is going to be such an incredible nurse. And I got to tell you, that was the divine intervention, because if she hadn't come in and been supportive of me, even though she didn't know I was there, I can tell you where I'd be. I'd still be in Missouri. I'd be checking out groceries, asking people, would you like paper or plastic? Honestly. So I want you to think about this. The fact that I can tell this story now and find the humor in it when I was so disempowered by this person. I am so grateful for him now. He has made my career so much more wonderful and financially lucrative because I have been able to tell this story. It's on YouTube if you want to also, but people can come here and see this because we got Gypsy News making this available to you and your colleagues. But one thing I want to say is that, you know, back in the day, I allowed myself to be disempowered. The one thing that I want to add to this is never, ever let somebody else take away your power. I should have reported this person. I should have turned him in. He mysteriously disappeared not much later that year. And I kind of wondered if there wasn't something a little shady about this person. But if you are being bullied by someone, don't take it. Don't try to laugh it away. And bullying can come in humor. If someone ever says to you, can't you take a joke? Or I'm joking. That's not humor. That's not funny. That's bullying. Don't let them get away with it. But use your humor. Use it to empower yourself. Use it to empower others. We don't want to cut one another off at the knees. We want to support ourselves this day and always. But there's never been a time for you to be more proud of yourselves, to recognize yourselves, to celebrate yourselves. I know it was said a little bit earlier that 2020 was the year of the nurse, but the World Health Organization has extended it to this year because this truly is a year that we want to celebrate you. Last year, gone in a blur. I don't even remember 2020. Every day was Groundhog Day, but we're here to celebrate you today. Gypsy Nurse is here to celebrate you today. AMN is here to celebrate you today. I am here to do this with you today. Let me know if I can be a resource. If you have questions, you have comments, I have prizes of unspeakable value for people who reach out to me, including fun stuff. And again, if you would like a go to stressrecoverytoolkit.com. I send you on your way and ask you to stay safe and see funny, and remember that humor is power.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. I was laughing so much.
Karyn, you delivered. You have put a smile on everyone's face. You have told some unforgettable stories that I know I won't forget. That was really fantastic. And I think what a wonderful way to end the day. So thank you for bringing a smile to everyone's face.
Love these comments. Thank you guys for commenting. Thank you for engaging with us here. And for those of you who are watching the replay, please share your comments as well.
Thank you, Karyn. And one more time, please feel free to tell everybody how they can learn more about you. You had a couple of different websites. I'll give you another opportunity to let people know.
This is my email. It's just Karyn@KarynBuxman.com, Karyn with a Y. And this is just a freebie I'm giving away. And that is my go-to page, which is the Stress Recovery Toolkit. I have a grade card where you can grade yourself on how well you're dealing with a stress or crisis. I have a PDF of some different ways you can use humor in a crisis or an extreme stress. And again, I'm just putting up some of the videos that make me laugh. And so if you need to go to a place where you can find some humor, by all means, head there.
Thank you, Karyn. And I'll get those links from Karyn, and I will put that on her page, on the events page. So you just go to gypsynurse.com, the events, the 2021 virtual conference, and find Karyn's name and click on the gypsynurse.com on the link for that one. And then we will have everything that she spoke about on there.
Thank you, Karyn, for making us all laugh. We needed it, and it was great to see you again.
Always a pleasure, Steve.
Thank you,
Karyn. All right.
So fun.
Lots of laughs with Karyn. Never a dull moment.
Lots of laughs, some great stories. I love seeing all the comments just in this chat and then kind of the live feed. I think she definitely had everybody laughing and probably reflecting back on their early nurse days. So really, really just great way to end the day.
Absolutely. And speaking of ending the day, this is our last session for today. And I want to thank everybody that has joined us throughout the day. We've had some great discussions. We've laughed. We've learned some things. And that's what it's all about. We have an action-packed schedule for tomorrow, too. Rachel, we've got 3 different sessions tomorrow. Maybe if you want to tell everybody what they are for tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. We have the Chopped Champion, Lorraine. She is actually a travel nurse as well. So we put a little call out this past year in 2020, and she responded to it, and we believe she responded to it. And she actually got picked, and she won. So she's going to be doing a little demo tomorrow, cooking demo, so you can learn more about cooking. We have Jean Cook and David Altamont. I hope I said that right. Sorry, David, if it's not. They're coming on, and they're going to be talking about your retirement, 401k, and some finance, which everyone, if you don't take finance advice, you got to, especially now. You just got to you make all that money. You need some advice. If you're just blowing it, you need to save. And then we also have Tyler Smith. She takes amazing pictures, and she will be explaining how she takes those pictures, how she makes them look so amazing, and just some fun, pose tips and everything Instagram worthy that you strive for these days. So it's going to be a great day.
We have a wide-ranging array of topics tomorrow. We look forward to it. And again, if you want to know more about what is coming up for tomorrow, you can visit our live events page on the gypsynurse.com. And the sessions tomorrow will be 12 p.m. with Lorraine, 3 p.m. and then 6 p.m. So look forward to seeing everybody again tomorrow. And we want to thank Sandra and AMN for being our sponsors for today's sessions. I think that everybody, again, learned a lot, had a few laughs at the same time. So a great way to end.
And thank you, Steve, for being my co-host today. I couldn't imagine someone else by my side. So.
You make it easy, Rachel. You make it real easy. Thank you for all the work you have put in to date. And we look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow.
Yep. See you guys tomorrow.